Good morning class. Today again we are starting with the chapter 2 geographic grid, latitudes and longitudes. In the previous class when we were discussing about this chapter, we learned that geographic grid is the crisscrossing of these imaginary lines. Which are the imaginary lines? The latitudes and the longitudes. So the crisscrossing of or the intersections of lines of latitudes and longitudes are known as the geographic grid. And what is the need of this geographic grid? Why we invented any such thing? To find out the position, to locate a particular point on the surface of the earth, as the earth is so vast. What is latitude? The lines which are running from east to west and parallel to the equator. Those imaginary lines are known as the latitudes, and longitudes are the again imaginary lines, but they run from north to south and passing through or converge at the North Pole and the South Pole. Then we have learnt about some of the characteristics of lines of latitude, that these lines are drawn at an angular distance. Equator is the largest line of latitude. It is situated at 0 degree, and as we move towards the South Pole or the North Pole in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere respectively, then the length of these lines of latitudes decreases. And since these lines of latitudes are parallel to each other and also parallel to the equator, that is why they are also known as the parallels of latitude. Today we will learn about some of the main latitudes and what is the use of these lines of latitude. So first, the main latitudes. What are the main latitudes? If we talk about the main latitudes, basically there are 7 main latitudes. Let's see what are the 7 main latitudes. This is the Earth. So if we talk about the lines of latitude, we know that these are drawn at the angular distance, and these lines are drawn at an angular distance 1 degree interval. Means the angular distance between the two lines of latitude is 1 degree. So there are 181 parallels of latitudes or the lines of latitude drawn at an interval of 1 degree each. So starting from the first that we have already discussed at 0 degree, this is the equator. This is the longest line of latitude. We also call it the Great Circle. So this is one of the important latitude. The next one is the North Pole, which is at an angle of 90 degree, and it is to the north of the equator. The angular distance is 90 degree and it is situated or located to the north of the equator, and this is known as North Pole. The next important latitude is South Pole. Actually, the North Pole and the South Pole are not the lines, but they are only the dots or the points. So, South Pole is again at an angle of 90 degree, but it is in the southern hemisphere or south of the equator. So, this is South Pole. Now, the next comes is the Tropic of Cancer. the next latitude is known as the Tropic of Cancer, and it is 23.5 degree north. This line of latitude located at 23.5 degree north of the equator, and this is known as Tropic of Cancer. The next important latitude is Tropic of Capricorn. It is again 23.5 degree but south. Why? Because it is in the southern hemisphere. So 23.5 degree south. This is known as Tropic of Capricorn. The next important latitude is the Arctic Circle. It is in the northern hemisphere, 66.5 degree north. This is Arctic Circle. And opposite to it here, 66.5 degree south. This line of latitude is known as the Antarctic Circle. So in this way you can see these are the 7 important lines of latitude. North Pole 90 degree north, Arctic Circle 66.5 degree north, Tropic of Cancer 23.5 degree north, Equator at an angle of 0 degree, Tropic of Capricorn 23.5 degrees south, Antarctic Circle 66.5 degrees south, and the South Pole 90 degrees south. These 3 are in the northern hemisphere, these 3 are in the southern hemisphere, and in between there is the equator, which divides the earth into the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. So this equator runs midway between the 2 poles, the North Pole and the South Pole, and divides the earth into 2 equal halves, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. And the poles, that is the North Pole and the South Pole, are opposite to each other at the extreme ends, and they are located at an angle of 90 degree. So the length, if we look here, as we have already discussed, that the largest line of latitude is the equator. It is the Great Circle. So the length of the equator is equal to the length of the circumference of the earth, and that is 40,075 kilometer. The length of equator is 40,075 kilometers. It is 40,075 kilometers, and we know that these, here I marked only the important latitudes, but if we talk about the all 181 latitudes, then they are drawn at an angle of 1 degree each. And we know that if we talk about the complete circle, what is the degree? It is complete 360 degree. So what will be the distance for the angular distance of 1 kilometer? The total length is 40,075 kilometer. The total angular distance is 360 kilometers. So what is the angular distance? So for 1 degree of angular distance, it will be roughly 111 kilometers. That is the 1 degree of angular distance that is represented between the two lines of latitude is actually the distance of 111 kilometers. So on the basis of this, we can calculate the distance between the various points on the surface of the earth.